Hello. Great. Hello, my name is Youyou Zhou, and I am a data and visuals reporter at Quartz. Quartz is a global news publication focused on business and technology, and we have a science desk that also covers energy, environmental science, food science, brain science, and money in science. So sometimes I work with reporters in the newsroom to make science communication more approachable to our audience. Today, I'm going to share with you 3 stories that I and my colleague did at Quartz. And they happen to be all about the implications of AI in the medical field. So the title. So there is a gap. There is a gap between how people think the world works and how the world really works. And increasingly, it becomes a problem because of the accumulative amount of data we have, companies have and governments have about us. We see a pattern that companies can use the data to profit off consumers and making misleading claims about what they get and what they offer. So the first story is about the gap between what you think privacy is and what privacy really is when it comes to medical records. The Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act of 1996 regulates that medical records need to be anonymized before practitioners can redistribute them to other users, meaning that there's no personal identifiable information should be attached to the data. But when data brokering companies get the anonymized medical records of millions of people with demographic information attached to them, and if they know your gender, race, ethnicity, and age, it's highly likely they can pin you down to just a few cases. So for this project, we used a New York State hospital inpatient discharge database that can be easily found online on the government site, and asked our readers to personalize the database to see how they can find themselves in the database. And so here you can put in your age, gender, race, and ethnicity, and then you will see the bubbles represent the clusters of these 4 criteria. And based on what you put in, you can see how you can find yourself, how many people will be like your group in the big data set. And then adding an additional layer of information, adding the county information where you live in New York State, we can further drill down to smaller groups. And it's probably unsurprising that minority groups have a higher probability of getting identified. So if you are a Black man, Hispanic, multi-race, multi-ethnicity person in New York State, you have the most high probability of being identified in a database. So how this goes to how we can make science human and approachable to our readers. Here we used a very commonly seen practice is personalization. By using demographic information and location information, you can help the reader to make the concept a bit closer to their real experience. And this is one way to bridge the gap is through personalization. This is a second story, and it is about direct-to-consumer genetic testing. So these companies have proliferated over the past few years, and when these companies tell you that they can decode your genes and to tell you the risk of breast cancer or tell you who's your ancestor, how accurate they are and what does the whole result mean. This is my colleague, Daniel Wolf. He's based in San Francisco, came up with this analogy, the Moby Dick. So he compared the book to the entire human genome, and chapters as chromosomes, sentences as base pairs, words as nucleus, and then gene mutation, according to him, is comparable to misspells in words. And some are harmful, which could lead to cancer. And then companies like 33andMe, they have they do not screen for in all the possible mutations, but they have a few variations. So this would be all the mutations you can get, assuming it's your whole genome. But they only have 3 variations, and if they can identify these 3 variations, then they can say you have a high risk of cancer. But if you don't have the 3 variations, you have other variations, there is also a possibility that you still have a high risk of cancer. So their result they gave you is not conclusive. And then for ancestry tracing, 23andMe does not screen for the entire human genome, which would be super costly and time-consuming. Instead, they only take a very small sample of it and then test that sample. And Daniel wrote, if reading Moby Dick from front to back is a complete decoding of your genome, then these ancestry tests would be like skimming, not even reading the cliff notes. And the result, this is how you can link Melville to other possible writers, is by comparing the words he used to other classic writers like Victor Hugo. If there are similar words, does that mean he has a higher likelihood he's from France? And so this is one way when we try to explain an unfamiliar concept to people. An effective approach that's also often used is to make a comparison. The thing we compare to matters. Here we used a book, and I asked Daniel before this, why he chose Moby Dick, and he says because this book is in public domain, and it also is one of his favorite. But also it's because this book is very well known to everyone. We don't have to explain it to make it the base for the comparison. It's very commonly seen we use other visual metaphors to explain a very complex concept to make it approachable to an audience. Some people like the periodic table, and and some would argue a periodic table is not on itself a very approachable concept. So that's another thing to consider. And the third story I would tell here is, this is a story about how people are getting medical records from virtual assistants like Amazon Alexa. So where is this when you ask a question, when you ask a medical question, you get an answer from Alexa, and where is this answer from, who's behind it, and how credible they are is often very opaque. We wanted to distill the process so people can understand how virtual assistants work when they answer your medical questions like, I got a fever, what should I do? So in this story, we tested all the health-related skills that can be found on the Alexa skill store. You have to download a skill in order for it to give you an answer. And then documented the responses we got from a range of questions, from asking about your food, from your head to your toe, basically. And then we compared how Alexa answered these questions to how a real doctor would answer the questions. We presented our findings in an interface that user can click and compare. And instead of they go and ask the question themselves and hear an audio clip, they can explore how different skills answer the questions differently and how it's different from the doctors. And then we also summarized how machine works, each step along the conversation in a flowchart. This is becoming an increasingly popular method used by newsrooms to explain often very opaque technologies behind companies. This is like, you show how you walk people through a journey, and like do it yourself. We tested all these things for you. This is how it like. Or we built a facial recognition camera so you know what is actually surveilled. And these are all the examples you can find today because of the proliferation of these new companies. As data becomes more abundant and the trend that companies trying to make profit of the claims of scientific advancement will only continue. I think it's becoming more important for science communicators to find ways to make scientific process and the theory understandable and relevant to the public. It's an alarming future, but I'm also very excited by the potential opportunities it brings to science communication. Thank you so much.